What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we've been seeing a lot of large studio and publisher acquisitions announced. Think of Microsoft and Activision, for example. Well, now it looks like the deal between Sony and Bungie could be getting a bit more interesting as the FTC is about to put a big microscope over it, and we're going to go over that one here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft's interesting future for game streaming with new hardware and a new strategy for free-to-play games. And we're also going to be talking about the big Summer Games Fest event that has been announced with Jeff Keighley. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps that a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with Mafia and a potential prequel for the series. We can see this post up by Kotaku. This covering the news that broke yesterday. Hangar 13 studio head Hayden Blackman is leaving the Mafia 3 maker after 7 years. 2K Games announced Wednesday. They say that the former LucasArts veteran is going to pursue his passion at a new endeavor. Now, a bit further down, they mention replacing Blackman is Nick Baines, currently studio head at Hangar 13's Brighton, UK office, which Kotaku understands to be leading development on a new Mafia game. While the project is still early in development, its code name is Nero, and it's expected to be a prequel to the Mafia trilogy. The plan is to make it in Unreal Engine 5 instead of the Mafia 3 engine that was recently used for the remasters. We keep hearing about that, right? Like different studios, publishers, developers, all moving to Unreal Engine 5, so it's be really curious to see how games progress in development with this newer engine from Epic. But we had the Mafia remake from that original one, and it was very good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it's certainly worth picking up because half the time it's on sale on places like Amazon. Something's like 50% off. But a prequel could be really interesting to see here, so I'm happy to hear that there is at least another Mafia game in development. It's just probably going to be several years before we see it. Also, we do have another wrestling game that's supposed to be releasing later this year. At least that's the projected release window for it. And we now have a title for it, which we can see here. This is All Elite Wrestling game gets first footage. It is called AEW Fight Forever. They put up a couple of clips for different reveals of wrestlers and some gameplay. They've been kind of doing this here and there with different sneak peeks. The one that's really interesting about this, and it is pointed out here by Nintendo Life, is the hope for a Switch version. So like a fully realized 3D wrestling game could sit alongside WWE 2K18 that is still broken, by the way. I will admit this game, Fight Forever, it doesn't look as polished, or it's weird to say this about a 2K wrestling game, but it's high quality as 2K22, but it doesn't necessarily need to be as it's their first outing. It is from Yuke's, who was working with 2K, and then they had that big breakup. So apparently they have help from the director of like No Mercy on this one. And my biggest thing here is they shouldn't try to be like this simulation wrestling game, which is what 2K is trying to be. Go back to the old days on the PS2 with things like Here Comes the Pain and try to more or less emulate that arcadey style feel that doesn't seem like it's too out there. That was a ton of fun back then. I'd love to see it replicated here with AEW Fight Forever. Oh, and a while ago we talked about how Bandai Namco was going to be introducing a new logo that, well, take a look because it appears like it's showing up on different Elden Ring box arts now that are being restocked in stores. And this was posted up by Ernesto saying they picked up a copy of the PS4 version today and asking if Bandai Namco changed their logo. Yeah, the logo itself, it looks very generic. I mean, it's not a bad logo or anything. Their older logo was a bit more splashy. This one's just a bit more straightforward, I guess. I think the biggest thing is it's different, so we're all kind of looking at it a bit sideways, and probably in a couple of years we'll just be used to this one rather than the older one that had like this Venn diagram of like orange and yellow going on. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony and Bungie. They had announced a little while ago that Sony would be acquiring Bungie for $3.6 billion. And it's a big deal in the sense that Sony has already told us their plans going forward is going to be more or less developing about 10 live service games. We saw GT7 come out. You could probably count that as one of them, but clearly they are looking for their own Destiny. Now, of course, owning Bungie will just give them Destiny 2, but it sounds like Bungie is still going to operate independently. Well, obviously revenue and all that generated would be going to Sony, but I think Sony really wants to harness the talent and the knowledge that's been accrued here with Bungie for their own like PlayStation Studios live service games so they don't come out busted and broken and have to basically do what Halo Infinite's doing now, which is spend years post-launch just getting everything caught up. Well, it looks like it might be a little harder to get this deal through than originally anticipated, because we can see this posted up by Josh saying, "Scoop, the FTC is diving deeper into the video game industry, opening a probe of Sony's $3.6 billion deal for Bungie, the studio behind first-person shooter Destiny. It follows that the in-depth investigation of Microsoft's $69 billion deal for Activision Blizzard. I don't think anyone's surprised that Microsoft's nearly $70 billion deal for Activision Blizzard was going to raise some eyebrows from the FTC and have them inevitably look into it. That seemed obvious to all of us, but this one apparently seems to be surprising some people that the FTC is going to be diving deeper into this. For example, Jason Schreier's response to the news here, saying during a wave of video game industry consolidation, the FTC is scrutinizing antitrust more than it has in years. Get your popcorn ready. Going on to respond, saying the FTC didn't even look at Microsoft's $7.5 billion deal with Bethesda, but last year, the commission got a new boss, Lena Khan, who is ambitious and hungry to fight tech consolidation. And I will say, there's been more and more curiosity popping up online if this Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal will go through. I still think it will, but I mean, if that goes through, then you have to only assume that Sony and Bungie, that deal would go through without too much issue there. I didn't even think too much about that though, with Microsoft and Bethesda, how that really wasn't scrutinized as much as we're seeing now, with this deal between Sony and Bungie being worth, what, about half, maybe actually a little less than half of the money that had to change hands for Bethesda from Microsoft. And I'll admit, I'm not as familiar with FTC regulation and them looking into some of these deals and all this. So if you are familiar with some of this, make sure you comment down below about this situation, specifically, of course, with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, but also Sony and Bungie, because the fact that at $3.6 billion seems to be getting an FTC probe or the microscope put over them is a little surprising, I guess, in the sense that Bethesda and Microsoft just went right by without too much of an eyebrow raise there. But I do believe all these deals will be going through, but it would be pretty shocking, actually, if we got the announcement say that, Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, that they're going to go ahead and acquire them, and then months later, it gets rejected and they're not able to acquire them. I feel like that would leave Activision Blizzard in a really bad spot with investors, and it'd probably be pretty embarrassing for Microsoft as well if they weren't able to get it to go through. But I guess we'll see as we head along here towards the end of this year. These deals take a while to go through. Microsoft and Activision, for example, probably won't be through until like early next year, and I guess we'll just keep an eye out for how all this plays out. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and one of their big pillars that they're focusing on right now, and that's game streaming. It's not necessarily as popular currently with most gamers who are plugged in online. A lot of us just want to play native experiences on our systems so we can avoid the occasional compression on screen or the lag that you will end up running to at some point with these different games, especially faster paced titles. I think you can get away with playing turn-based RPGs without too much issue, for example, with something like game streaming. But now, something a bit interesting has happened here. Take a look at this. This was posted up by VGC. Fortnite can now be streamed free on Xbox Cloud Gaming with no subscription needed. Xbox's first free-to-play cloud title can be played on iOS, Android, or your PC. This is actually a pretty big deal for iOS, considering Fortnite was pulled down, if you remember that. There was that whole thing between Apple and Epic, and they just said, nope, Fortnite's not on here anymore. It's just get it off here. People were sideloading it from what I remember, and there's a whole thing, but you can access game streaming through the Xbox Game Pass application, which means you would then be able to play Fortnite on your phone, yes, through streaming, but it would make it a bit easier and more and just possible in general for a lot of people. Also, it does look like Microsoft is going to be keeping an eye on how this does exactly with their first outing for a fully free-to-play cloud-based version of Fortnite. This from Catherine Gluckstein, who says, "This is just the beginning for us. We're going to learn, implement feedback, and in time, look to bring even more free-to-play titles to players through the cloud." Now, Tom Warren did elaborate on this a bit more, saying Fortnite free on Xbox Cloud Gaming is part of Microsoft's Xbox Everywhere initiative, which I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about in the coming months. xCloud is getting ready for more markets, more games, and more devices. He goes on to say Xbox Everywhere includes devices like a TV puck for Xbox Cloud Gaming, apps for TVs, and even Microsoft's original plan to let you play all Xbox games you own through the cloud. So it does sound like that streaming stick that we've kind of speculated around Microsoft attempting to do as like a lower cost option, whether it's one you want to travel with or just have in a separate room, or who knows, maybe it's just like your main system to play on. If they can get like a streaming puck, I guess is what it is now, for $100 or less with a controller, I think that'll be very compelling as that impulse buy just kind of sitting in the electronics section there. And if it's like this puck, I'm kind of picturing like the Chromecast Ultra that we had for Google Stadia, which in turn would mean that we would probably see an Ethernet port on it, which I still think is obviously the way to go for game streaming, eliminate any issues you may have with Wi-Fi and interference and all this. And then tack on the fact that they could also market this little puck as a media streaming device, something that you have with your Fire Stick now, where you're streaming Netflix or HBO Max or Paramount Plus or whatever, right? But it can also play all these different Xbox games with one monthly fee. And think about this, that puck, what if they call it like an Xbox Series, I don't know, E or something like that? Does that then count as a console sale for them? I mean, technically it has the Xbox branding on it. It plays Xbox games through the cloud. You might just see like their overall Xbox console sales spike massively after that. But it's making more and more sense why that little Xbox Game Pass application we may have on our phone or tablet or anything still says beta next to it. Because it sounds like when we leave beta with this application, it's just going to be for all of your different Xbox games that you own. You can just at any time stream it through the cloud. It's a nice thing to have as convenience. I'm still not sold on cloud streaming for games as like a console replacement or anything, but the fact that it would come with your Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription, it's just like, yeah, if you're in a pinch and maybe you're traveling or something and you don't have access to your system or PC even, you can just stream a game here and there with a controller, even keyboard and mouse, and at least still have a decent enough time. But yeah, this seems like the big pillar for Microsoft. Being able to reach those 2 billion gamers, as Phil Spencer said way back when, would be through cloud streaming where you don't have to think about it. Oh, it's an application on your TV and you can just go ahead and jump right in. Next up, let's talk about a game that popped up online that is absolutely fascinating because we didn't think this existed. Take a look at this. This is posted up over on Reddit saying my fiance has a playtest copy of the canceled Star Wars Battlefront 3. Get this, for PSP, that's right, PlayStation Portable. This Reddit thread absolutely exploded, by the way, over 40,000 upvotes on this. The story is LucasArts was a client of a relative of my fiance back in the day, and he got to playtest a lot of games, one of which was Star Wars Battlefront 3. Once it was canceled and all assets were being gathered up to send back to Skywalker Ranch, one of the playtest cartridges for the PSP version got left behind. Him being young, didn't think too much of it, took it home, tested it out. AI Battles, CTF, and Conquest all worked fine. In fact, there are images of this UMD actually playing. So what we have here is something that none of us thought existed, especially in physical form. We have had some images and some video footage of Battlefront 3 leak out from time to time. Originally, it was designed by Free Radicals, who was reformed recently to work on Time Splitters with Embracer Group. But looking at this, I'm wondering if there are plans to dump this UMD. They do mention what's it worth. Well, I mean, you could probably get up with I'm sure some different places online who would be interested in cataloging this. And I mean, at times they'll put money together to get this kind of stuff, but I think it's still worth something, even if you dump the image and put it out there just for the sake of preservation, because I mean, this is Battlefront 3 at least working on the PlayStation Portable. And the story goes that the game was like 95% done. Again, according to Free Radical, it's like one side of the story, but it was canceled because the marketing budget came into question. Should we really be able to push this? Is it going to sell well enough? All of those different things. It's just weird that you let it get that far into development and you just scrap it completely. It was going to be on the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, the PSP, and the DS. I think even the Wii was brought up. So it would have been cool to see it released, but who would have thought randomly one day, oh yeah, here's a Battlefront 3 UMD with a good chunk of the game and it's completely playable. I'm curious how this progresses here, will we see it dumped online for us to just be able to check out on a modded PSP? Will it go to auction to see how much it's worth? I guess we'll find out. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the big summer gaming event that has now been officially announced, and that's Summer Games Fest with Jeff Keighley. We can see this posted up over on Twitter from Jeff saying, "We have a date. Don't miss Summer Games Fest, streaming live on Thursday, June 9th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm hosting a live cross-industry showcase, game announcements, reveals, and Day of the Devs. Lots of events coming in June. Keep checking summergamefest.com. He also talks about how they're going to be airing these live in different IMAX theaters across the country and everything. So that's an interesting idea, way to do that. If we take a look at Summer Games Fest 2021 partners, there are quite a few that were on here. They say stay tuned for 2022 partner announcements. So we still have to see if it's going to hold up like this, but I mean, back last year, PlayStation, Xbox technically were there. Not like as in like full force or anything, but you know, it was still something. So we'll wait for this to be updated to see if Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo all take part in this. I assume many third parties will, because then they don't have to hold up an entire like event by themselves. They can have like 2 or 3 reveals just kind of put in here alongside of everyone else and just have a fairly large showcase just kind of put all together. I'm thinking of like the Game Awards without the awards, which I mean, a lot of people mostly tune in for the announcements anyway. So there you go. I am curious to see how this works out for Jeff, because this would be the E3 replacement. And realistically, if Summer Games Fest is good this year, do we need E3 to come back? I guess for the physical in-person event, that's like the one thing that would have over this, but who knows? Maybe we get to a point where Summer Games Fest is like the in-person event alongside of this large showcase, but we'll see. That's going to be June 9th, so look out for that next month. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, which Zelda game is better? You knew this was coming. I had to put Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild one-on-one against each other. Look at that though, Breath of the Wild 66%, Ocarina of Time 34%. That's on over 30,000 votes. I did the same poll on Twitter. Basically the same results, about 66% Breath of the Wild, 34% Ocarina of Time. Again, on over 30,000 votes. So, hey, is that where we are now? Has Breath of the Wild truly dethroned what a lot of people looked at as the greatest Zelda game ever made, the greatest game ever made? Maybe Breath of the Wild really is above it now based on what I'm seeing currently with gamers. And what's that say about Breath of the Wild 2? It's really gonna have to deliver. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Plan saying, I will have to disagree with you. I do think there's more of a chance of Dreamcast, maybe than say a Saturn or even the Master System. Although I could definitely see it like a Master System Game Gear mini combined system selling in like the PAL territories for nostalgia, as it was a big market there. And of course, the Tech Toy in Brazil sold a bunch of those. I do believe if Sega's gonna try another mini console, it would be the Dreamcast. The Saturn, emulation there is still a bit sketchy, whereas on the Dreamcast side, emulation gotten pretty good, and the hardware I think is to a level where Sega could make this work within certain costs, right? Like it has to be within reason. They're not going to build a $250 Dreamcast Mini. Some people would buy it, but most people wouldn't. So now we're seeing the newer Raspberry Pis be able to play Dreamcast games well enough, and realistically, Sega and with M2 would probably have to make sure at least 20 Dreamcast games worked well enough. So I think if they're going to put the money in, do a Dreamcast Mini and get it out there, especially before they roll the dice with these super games. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether there's the Sony, Bungie, and Microsoft Activision deals all getting put under the microscope by the FTC. Do you think these deals are going to go through, or do you think they potentially get blocked? And then also, what about Microsoft's plans for this streaming puck system and the idea that we could have free-to-play games completely free, streamed through the cloud, no subscription needed? Guys, have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.